Hello everyone and welcome back to Jimmy Talks Jira. This week I want to talk a little bit about dashboards versus sprint and Kanban boards, when you would use one over the other, and a little bit of best practices for use with dashboards. Without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so when you are deciding whether you should be using a dashboard or a sprint or Kanban board to surface and display your information, the two things you need to be thinking about are who are you sharing this with and what information are you trying to share. So when we're talking about a sprint team, a dashboard might be the right vehicle, but probably isn't the right vehicle for talking about their day-to-day work. You would prefer them to work within a Kanban or a sprint board where they can focus on the tasks that they have to do right now, and then they can look at the backlog for what's going to be coming up next, but they also have the flexibility to move items through the workflow from the board as they're working on them. So when you want to use a dashboard is more for your scrum masters or your product owners, or possibly even your leadership team who wants to look at the information at a glance. They want a single pane to come in and look at a bunch of different statistics, be it, the health of your epics as far as what's still in progress, what has been completed, what hasn't even been started, as well as the workload on your users. Who is currently overloaded, who is working on tons of incident work and not able to get to their sprint feature work. So now that we've talked a little bit about the audience that you're going to want to use, let's talk about some best practices for setting up your dashboard itself. The first thing I would recommend is be intentional on the gadgets that you are adding here. You only have so much screen real estate to work with. So when you're thinking about things, look at your layout and make sure that your layout matches the view that you want to display to the people that are going to be looking at this. In addition to that, you're going to want to make sure that the gadgets are ordered in the way in which people are going to want to look at the information. So put the most important information at the top, front and center, the less important information further down where they will have to scroll a bit in order to get to it. And in addition to that, consider removing things that people aren't really using, because there's no point in loading the information for a dashboard gadget that no one really cares about. In addition to that, I would also caution about using the auto refresh configuration setting, especially on every single gadget. I know we all want to see the latest real-time information, but save that for something if you are going to, say, set this up as a wallboard. Where this is going to be displayed on a television set that is broadcast to the entire office. That is one area where having auto refresh makes sense, as you have a single point that people are looking at that is not loaded on individuals' machines. If you're setting this up as a dashboard that individual people will be going to and looking at, consider just leaving the auto refresh unchecked, and people can reload the dashboard page if they want to see the latest and greatest information. By having the dashboard left up and that auto refresh setting on, every user that has an instance of that dashboard up is going to be auto refreshing, and that can put a lot of performance load on either your Jira server or your Jira Cloud instance. And that's just one of those sort of performance things you'd probably like to avoid if possible. So the next thing I'd like to also point out is permissions to both view and edit. And yes, I did say edit as well. I know that view permissions specifically is something that everyone seems to get hung up on. I get tons of requests about why people can't see things, and usually it comes down to one of two sets of permissions. So either you have on the dashboard failed to share it with viewers here. And I'd also like to point out now, there is now dashboard editors. So instead of having to ask an admin to change the ownership of a dashboard, you can now set up editors much like you can viewers, whether it's based on project, group, or individual user access. You can give additional people editor access to your dashboards and also your filters, so that should you be on vacation, people are still able to make changes to this without you being the bottleneck on that. So, to that end, make sure that you have set on the dashboard itself the viewers that you want to be able to see this. For public dashboards, I would consider something like My Organization, which allows anyone who has logged in to be able to view it, or allow something like project-based access. By going to project-based access, you will basically be setting things up saying that, everyone within this project who can already see these issues is able to see this dashboard. Those are two relevant settings I would recommend. If you need it locked down further than that so that it's only visible to a leadership team, by all means, make sure to limit things as appropriate. And then at the same time, you'll also want to check your filter and make sure that you have set the appropriate permissions on the individual filters. So if you have a dashboard gadget, much like I have here, that's using my All Epics filter, you will not be able to see the information in that filter if the filter itself has not been shared to people with view access. Much like the dashboard, I would recommend, if you've made filters specifically for this dashboard, make the viewership sharing the same as you have on the dashboard. And at the same time, you can also share editor access to these filters as well. Much like the dashboard, this is just really beneficial if you are away from the office for any period of time, so that there's at least someone else who can make changes to the filter in your absence. At the same time, I would also highly recommend being intentional about the filters that you create. I'm not necessarily saying that you should create an individual set of filters for each dashboard, even if the filters are the same, but I would consider creating filters for dashboards that don't share, say, a Kanban board filter. And that is just so that as the team's workload changes, you aren't necessarily going to automatically affect the dashboard when you are changing the information that's being shown to the team. Because as we talked about, your audiences that are going to be looking at the dashboard could very well be different from the sprint team that is doing the work. I hope these are some things just to give you some thoughts on how to set up your dashboards so that you will get the best use out of them. I hope you found this video insightful, and be sure to tune in on Thursday when I attempt my first live stream on YouTube, where I will be going over some of my tips to prepare for an Atlassian in-person event. On that same note, Atlassian Team 22 is happening next week in Las Vegas. I will be down there, and there will still be a video posted on Tuesday due to the magic of the internet. But if you are going to be in person, be sure to look out for me and stop by and say hi. And thanks for stopping by.